RJ, we have the opportunity to see something very fun, and that is in the Western Conference, we could see a wild card team have more points than their round one opponent. Their opponent, of course, who will have home ice advantage for winning their division. The Utah Mammoth currently sit with 90 points in the top wildcard spot in the Western Conference. The Edmonton Oilers are currently first place in the Pacific Division, also with 90 points, but Utah has a game in hand. Isn't this playoff format incredible?
Dylan, you got to start my day off with just throwing the NHL's terrible playoff format at me. I've been trying to forget about it and just enjoy this for what it is. But yeah, no, the format is bad. I've thought this forever. And yeah, Utah not only has a game in hand, if you want to just look at kind of standings position, they also have what would be the tiebreaker. They won't be against any of these Pacific Division teams standing wise in that sense. But yeah, they are probably a better team just standings ranks wise than whoever they're going to face in the first round.
It just might be a better team, period. Like,
I wouldn't go that far.
I know you
because if we're gonna talk Oilers, I think they figured it out.
Yeah, I we could get to that in a second, but yeah, it's an interesting scenario. That has never happened during this current playoff format's existence. There were some years back in the day of the three divisions per conference and the South Least division. There was a couple times where those division winners were ranked as the 3 seed. They would play the 6 seed, and there was, sometimes I believe it was 2008 and 2012 where those 6 seeds had more points than the 3rd seed. But yes, it would definitely be unprecedented in the modern playoff format. So some interesting stuff there. We can stick with the Western Conference. I mean, it's really coming down to the wire here, particularly between Los Angeles and Nashville, RJ. Do you feel like one of these teams has the inside track on that final wild card spot in the West, or do you think it's still too close to call?
It's still, I'm not ready to call it yet. I think it's still too close, but I think LA has the inside track just by virtue of easier schedule. And I mean, they are a point up with a game in hand. So that will help you when there's 3 or 4 games to go in the season. That's just going to be a help. But yeah, I think LA probably has the inside track, which again is nuts because they have, I know this has been talked about a ton around the league, but they have 20 regulation wins in 78 games, and they could end up making the playoffs.
Are you telling me that
is ridiculous? Yeah, if we're complaining about the playoff format, the point system is what I have a bigger complaint with. That should not happen.
Hey, 19 OTLs so far. It's a very legitimate way to pile up points in the modern NHL.
Hey, they are a record-setting team from that perspective. So there you go.
Yep. I do think Nashville is realistically probably the only team that should still be in this mix. I mean, Winnipeg and San Jose are still there. They haven't been eliminated. I mean, technically St. Louis and Seattle haven't been eliminated, but they seem pretty much out of it at this point. Do you think the Jets or the Sharks have a shot at this, or do you think it's mostly just LA and Nashville like I do?
Yeah, well, I think the Sharks are done because they just cannot seem to beat Nashville. They match up really poorly against them, and they face them one more time. And if Nashville gets another win, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think the Sharks are done. As for Winnipeg, I mean, it's interesting because they are playing like some pretty good hockey right now. So I don't want to rule them out. They're playing, I think, better hockey than LA or Nashville, but it is a big hill to climb 3 points back. But they would have the tiebreaker on LA. So if the Kings really do fall apart, I don't think Winnipeg is entirely out of it yet.
Yeah, I'm a little questionable there. I know we kind of talked about this during the media meal yesterday, and I was kind of more up on the Jets than you were, but then today, I don't know. I just feel like they won't do it.
No, you're not believing it. Yeah,
they could though. I mean, they're definitely. Well, I mean, they're both riding 3-game win streaks right now, both the Kings and the Jets, and I just feel like if they're both going to stay kind of hot. I mean, obviously LA has the inside edge there. Now, that's the wild card race. We have the two other races in the Western Conference. The race for the second seed in the Central, obviously a big one recently between Dallas and Minnesota. Dallas was able to come out on top on that one. They have a 4 point lead, RJ, with both of those two teams, with having 3 games remaining. Dallas would kind of have to really screw this up to not end up with home ice for that first round matchup.
Yeah, well, the game last night between the two of them, between Dallas and Minnesota, where
Mhm.
Dallas ends up winning, I think that one pretty much decided it. That kind of felt like the race right there. I imagine Dallas just wraps up home ice. They face the
The
Rangers and the
Rangers.
Leafs next. I think they'll be all right. So I'm not worried
Yep.
about them. I think we've had this matchup just at least between the two teams just locked in for a little while now, and I think it's certainly shaping up to be the best first round matchup. It's a shame it's going to be a first
Mhm.
round matchup. Again, problem with the format, but it'll be a heck of a series.
It will be. Colorado clinched the President's Trophy. I mean, it felt like they clinched that by the end of October. So I don't know. Not much to talk about there. And then in the Pacific Division, RJ, Edmonton currently sits at the top with 80 points. Vegas and Anaheim both with 89 points. Edmonton with 90 points. I think I said 80 for some reason. So only a 1 point difference there between the Oilers, Golden Knights, and Anaheim. They've all played 79 games. This division, it feels like, or at least the standings would dictate, that it is anybody's race. But as you mentioned earlier, Edmonton's playing really well right now. Particularly Connor McDavid is playing really well right now.
Yeah, and I've watched the last few Oilers games. They have absolutely locked in, and it's not just Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid things, which he gets a 5 point game against the Sharks, takes over in multiple moments. I know the Sharks have some bad D that was exposed there, but like that, those were just some Connor McDavid doing things only he can in that game. But what I'm really impressed by is how they have locked it down defensively. And as much as I have kind of called for them to get rid of their coach, Chris Knobloch, at various points throughout the season, I have to give him credit now because when the time has really mattered most, they have figured it out defensively. And I do wonder if this is just kind of a switch they can flip whenever they want, because they've done it the last few seasons where they get ready for playoff hockey and all of a sudden they can play solid defensively, even though the goaltending has been suspect. But you look at that game against the Sharks. I mean, the Sharks were held to single digit shots through maybe late in the second period. They were generating nothing. I mean, they scored a couple goals on their single digit shots, but they really weren't generating a whole lot. And I mean, we saw this when the Oilers played the Kraken recently, where we watched that game. Edmonton is just locking it down defensively in a way that seemed impossible for most of the season. But at this point, I'm really starting to wonder, okay, is this just part of the plan? Is this something they know they can't do for a full season because you cannot expend that kind of effort? It's impossible. But as soon as they feel actually legitimately threatened or like, okay, we have to worry about this, they can just lock in, they can flip that switch, reliably do it,
Mhm.
and they're fine.
Yeah, I don't know, because as much as I thought Edmonton was going to turn it on at the end of the year and make a run, and they are, I'm not as sold on things defensively because I look at their games for their last handful of games, and yes, they good defensively against San Jose, good defensively against Chicago, Seattle, Anaheim, but then
Vegas. Oh
but
no, they lost that one. Never
well,
mind.
yeah,
I
no, they
forgot.
lost
There's the other.
5-1 to Vegas, so defense maybe not great
Yeah.
there, and then the
I
Utah
was like, I
game
was
they
thinking the
lose.
Vegas game before that.
Yeah, and then the Utah game that they played right before that Sharks game, I mean, that one ends 6-5 in favor of Utah in overtime. Like, I I don't know that the defensive issues are totally solved there. I think it's one of those things where they've solved it to a point, but when you start talking about other playoff teams, and again, we're not even talking about like world beater playoff teams here when we're talking about Vegas and Utah. I still think there's some issues there. Whether it's the D, which obviously has issues, and then still the goaltending at times looking like it still has issues. So I don't know. They're not really going to be challenged the rest of the way. Their final 3 games are LA and then Colorado, who has nothing to play for because they've already clinched the President's Trophy, and the Vancouver Canucks to finish out the year. So I don't think any of those teams are really going to challenge them unless Colorado decides to run out their team and really try in that game for some reason. Um, so I don't know that we're really going to have an answer on this until they have to play Utah in the first round if they are to finish at the top of the division, which based on that schedule, they probably will.
Yeah, I think they will. Even though it might not be best for them, I think honestly the best matchup that you might prefer is if you do barely lose out on the
Yeah,
division, Vegas passes you and you get to face Anaheim in the first round. That's the matchup that I would want
agreed.
if I was the Oilers. But I mean, again, that's the problem with the whole seeding system and all of that. It doesn't really reward you for finishing higher. I'm with you in that it's going to be more of a challenge. I still think they're going to look pretty good against Utah, but that is one team that might worry me because they can they can score if you make mistakes and if you do slip up, and especially if the goaltending isn't where it needs to be, like it certainly wasn't in that game against Utah on Tuesday. That could be a real problem for you. I doubt Tristan Jarry is the one in net for Edmonton when all that happens.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit more confident there with Connor Ingram in net, but still, yeah, Utah is the one team that you could face that might actually burn you on that.
Yeah, Utah, good power play. The penalty kill for the Oilers, not great, below league average there. And I think Utah, it's a very interesting matchup for Utah because Utah is a team that I think both of us are still not sold on their defensive
Yep.
structure and everything, and the maturity on that side of things. But in a matchup against Edmonton, I think that might kind of help out Utah a little bit just because it'll be easy for them to goad Edmonton into just a back and forth wide open game that Utah generally excels at. And I think it wouldn't shock me if we saw a couple overtimes and that series went long because it could easily turn into a coin flip where games just end based on whoever scores that final goal, and it's not really up to which team is particularly better. It's just whichever team happens to score last.
Yeah, and I could see that, but in that situation, I'd still side with the Oilers because whichever team has Connor McDavid on it
For sure.
usually wins those types of games.
For sure. I'm just explaining why I think the
Yeah, no,
Ducks
I got
would
it. I got it.
definitely
Yeah.
be a better option for them than Utah. I feel like Utah's, you know, specifically built almost to goad the Oilers into losing any sort of semblance of playoff structure and just devolve into chaos.
But it
And
will be the ultimate test of whether
it will.
Knobloch can get his team to just lock it down or not.
It will. So that's the Western Conference, RJ. And then over on the Eastern Conference side of things, the wild card race currently looks like it might be settled, maybe. The Boston Bruins at 96 points, the Ottawa Senators at 94, and then on the outside looking in, the Detroit Red Wings and New York Islanders both with 91 points. So 3 points back of Ottawa. All these teams have 3 games remaining. Do you think Ottawa is able to hold on? Is that 3 point lead enough, RJ? Or do you think and we'll talk about this, the newly Pete DeBoer led New York Islanders or the Detroit Red Wings led by your boy Todd McClellan are going to be able to catch them?
The best coach in Sharks history versus the worst coach in Sharks history. Which one can either of those catch them? Yeah, I think you look at the Senators and again they're playing great hockey recently. Like I think they should be all right, but I mean the Islanders probably have the best shot there because they face the Senators next on tomorrow actually
Yeah.
at 10 a.m. start for us in the
Yeah.
Pacific. There, I got to
Because
get up, make sure. Yeah.
yeah, because there's 0 games today. It's the last Friday of the regular season, and there is for some reason 0 games today.
Well,
Sorry.
here's the thing. I know that I actually understand because they've pushed all the games to Saturday on the weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, how do you? Here's the thing. There shouldn't be no games.
There should be at least one primetime game on a Friday, right? What do
Yeah.
people do on Fridays? They go out after work, right? You're getting ready for the weekend. You're going to go to the bar, you're going to go to a restaurant, whatever. There should be at least one primetime game. I would say there should be 2 national games going back to back on a Friday night.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Like to give something to watch because again, this is such a great playoff race this year. If you're into it, and there were a lot of games yesterday, you
Hmm.
want to see what happens next. No,
Right.
I'm with
Why
you. There
have them
shouldn't be
all
0
stacked up on
games.
a Thursday? That infamous day that everybody goes out Thursday.
I don't know. I mean, I like you're contending with the Masters this weekend, but like
Friday
Friday,
Masters in the
yeah,
evening, like you're not.
yeah, exactly. You're not really contending with it, are you? So yeah, no, I totally get that. And I mean, you still have some games on Sunday competing with Masters Sunday, so like you're clearly
Yeah.
not focused on that. But back to the wild card race
Yeah.
though. I think the Islanders probably have the best shot just because the path at least goes through Ottawa. They're still going to, I think, need some more help there because I mean Ottawa has New Jersey and Toronto left. That last game, if it matters against Toronto, the Leafs, at least the fans will be hoping for an upset there. I don't know, Dylan. Like if you're a Leafs fan and that game could knock Ottawa out of the playoffs, but it would also a win could also ensure that you do not have your own draft pick that is potentially top 5. I know the lottery, whatever, but
Yeah.
that could like knock you out of a chance for that spot. Which way are you going? Who are you rooting for?
I would always put my own team above the other. You gotta root for the loss so that you ensure you have your draft pick, or at least give yourself the best chances of having your draft pick.
Okay, but playoff berth versus I guess the draft pick is probably more important
You
long
have
term to
to
your own
you have to
franchise.
figure out yourself. You can't be sacrificing just to stick
Yeah,
it
yeah.
to a team that's probably going to get bounced in a round or two.
Yeah. Well, see, what if it is more or less how it is now, where like right now the Leafs have the sixth best lottery odds. So
Mhm.
already you have to win the lottery, one of those two spots, in order to keep your pick. But a win would, move them to like eighth best. So it's really just a matter of a few percentage points on the lottery versus for sure knocking the Senators out of the playoffs.
I still think you focus on your own thing. You got to take care of your own house before you start worrying about somebody else's.
Okay. I'm gonna disagree with you.
I
If
I,
I
I
was in
think
that spot.
the bad energy, that's how you end up in situations like Toronto is in right now. There's already too much negativity and negative energy and vibes around that whole situation. That's why you're here to begin with.
Okay. So you think also that I guess rooting for that side of it might bring out some bad vibes to the hockey gods and make you more likely to lose the lottery.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, from a Leafs perspective, I think you're already at 100% to lose the lottery because you're the Leafs. So might as well throw the bad vibes out there. I don't know. That's what I would do.
That's what they want you to think.
Okay.
Yeah, I
What do you
think
think though? What do you think though? Is it over? Is it kind of wrapped up? Is that gap big enough?
I think the gap is probably big enough. I mean, if the Islanders beat Ottawa, the Islanders are still going to be in it for that wild card spot. I think that if the Islanders are going to make it, it's going to have to come through them getting the third spot in the Metro and them catching the Flyers because they're only 1 point back of the Flyers. Both teams have played 79 games. I think that that's going to be the way in for them. I don't think Detroit gets it done and catches Ottawa just because it's Detroit. I don't know. They look good in very small spurts. I mean, they totally beat up on the Flyers yesterday and looked really good. But I just don't think they're going to be able to be consistent enough over 3 games to be able to catch Ottawa. But I do think the Islanders could potentially catch the Flyers because, I mean, you're only talking about 1 point there. And the Flyers, they looked rough yesterday in that game against Detroit.
Yeah, they did. And the rest of their schedule is not a gimme. I mean, they've got Winnipeg tomorrow playing to keep their season alive, basically. Then they've got Carolina, who I believe should still be needing to play for something to lock up the East at that point. We'll see on Monday if that's the
Yeah.
case. And then they've got Montreal, who's right in the middle of that crazy race with Buffalo and Tampa, where they should have something to play for at the
Yeah.
end, you would think. So that's a much tougher schedule than say the Islanders going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's really the interesting race in the Eastern Conference. It just comes down to that third spot in the Metropolitan Division, and can the Islanders get there and catch the Flyers. I mean, Columbus is technically still in that too. They're only 2 points back of the Flyers, also 79 games played. So they're very much in the mix as well. Although things there seem to be cooling off substantially from the incredible run they'd had after their coaching change. 2-7-1 in their last 10, RJ. That's a tough way to finish out the year.
Yeah, it is. I think that, the new coach bump is very real, but it can only last so long. And I think, yeah, kind of turning back into a pumpkin here, it's a shame because normally the run that they went on afterward would be enough to propel you to at least a playoff spot, but not in this conference, not this year. I feel bad about that because, like, Columbus needs some good stuff to
Yeah.
happen for them. They need it in the worst way.
The fans, and again, we talked about it after the Kraken were there, just how loud that building was and how engaged everybody was. Like, you could tell how much it meant to everybody there in Columbus that that team was playing well and playing entertaining hockey, good hockey. I really wanted them to make the playoffs, but I just don't think it's going to happen for them here. If you had to pick a team, RJ, plant your flag right now. Who is getting that third spot in the Metropolitan Division? Is it the Flyers? Is it the Islanders? Or is it the Blue Jackets?
I'll go Islanders. I'll go
Okay.
Islanders and a lot of it is just based on remaining schedule. The fact I would not have said that if you had asked me that last night after we saw Matthew
Yes,
Schaefer go down
I agree.
with what looked to be maybe a collarbone type ailment, and that's a big issue for him since he's had collarbone problems before. The way he was holding his arm, and I didn't see that at first. We were in the media room having the media meal last night, and you're like, look, he's kind of holding his arm like a collarbone thing. We looked to see where the puck hit him. We're like, oh no, but he was able to come back, tried for the empty net, which would have set outright the rookie defenseman goal scoring record all time. He tied it, I believe, in that game. So good to see him come back. Hopefully he's all right. Looks like he probably is if he was able to come back in that game. So that's a reason I have confidence. I would never pick them if he was going to be out for the last 3 games. But I think I'm a big believer in Pete DeBoer. I
Hmm.
think the new coach bump is going on right now with the Islanders. I think the Flyers schedule is a little bit tougher. Yeah, give me New York. As much as I don't even know if it's what I'd want to see, and I like the Islanders story. I wouldn't mind them making the playoffs, but the idea of a Penguins Flyers first round
It'd be
playoff
so good.
series. So I certainly wouldn't mind if Philly took that spot just for that first round matchup. I'd watch every game.
I would too. I want to say the Islanders so bad, and just something in my gut is telling me that I shouldn't pick the Islanders. That I think the Flyers will get it done. I don't know. Maybe, you know what my ideal scenario would be. As much as
But
the Penguins Flyers first round matchup would be a lot of fun, and I would be right there with you. I'd be watching every second of that. I want to see the Islanders get the third spot in the Metro, and the Flyers catch the Senators for the wild card spot. Make it happen.
I
Look, it could happen because the Islanders have I guess it can't happen. Yeah, it could happen.
yeah, it could happen.
Flyers
I'd
only
say
2 point
unlikely.
back of the Senators.
The thing is, though, I want no, because I would rather have the Senators be in that wild card spot because I think at this point Carolina's probably going to win the East. It's not over, but I think that's probably more likely. And I want a team that can upset them, and I think Ottawa's got a much better chance.
I mean, Carolina has a cakewalk to the Eastern Conference Final. That is for sure. Like, they're going to be facing whichever one of these second wild card teams, most likely. That isn't guaranteed yet, but most likely. And yeah, against Ottawa, Detroit, the Islanders, Columbus, or Philadelphia, I don't see how Carolina loses a series there. I don't think any of them are capable of upsetting them. And then in the second round, you get to face one of Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, or New York, the Islanders. Like, they're winning that. Like, I don't. You think the
Here's the thing:
Penguins can
second
upset
round, I
them?
actually have more confidence. If they face Ottawa, I don't know about that. Again, I've talked about this. Like the Canes, at least through the few games I've seen them, again, that style of play, like it puts them on permanent fraud watch.
It does, but
It
they've
does not hold
proven
up in
that
the
that doesn't
playoffs.
happen until they get to a very legitimate playoff opponent who then just wipes the
And
floor
then it
with them.
happens reliably and they get swept.
Yes, yeah. but they have proven enough that it is more than enough to get past, you know, the weak teams that exist in the first round.
I guess so, but I
I
feel
mean, pretty
differently about
reliably. In the
Ottawa.
first round, they lost one game last year. They lost one game the year before that. They lost two games the year before that. And then they went to game 7 against Boston in 22. So you got to go a ways back before a first round series for them was close.
Yes. Again, I think this year is different. I'm not as sold on this year's Canes team, even though they're better points wise, results
They look
wise.
better
I'm just
on paper.
on paper they do look better.
Yeah.
I'm still not as sold. Again, the way that they're playing, get works great in the regular season. And some of the teams too, like Ottawa, I think is better than what their record is. Like a lot of the underlying numbers show that. And you look at, I'm big on head-to-head records
Yeah.
over the season with these teams, and I look at, again, we don't know whether it's Pittsburgh or Philly, but I look at the Flyers, and in the 3 previous games, Carolina's gone to overtime with Philly all 3 times.
Mhm.
Overtime, shootout. So those have been close. And also, I like Rick Tocchet to outcoach Rod Brindamore, should it come to that in a playoff series. Um, and then if it's Pittsburgh, I mean, they lost to Pittsburgh the first time, shootout win the second time, overtime win the third time, and then a more convincing win out the fourth. But like, there have been some close games against Pittsburgh too. It's not
Yeah.
like they've been steamrolling these teams.
No, I agree. But then it by your head to head argument, you should want my scenario to play out, and you want the Flyers to match up against Carolina rather than Ottawa, because Ottawa is 1-2 against Carolina this year.
Yeah, but the win though does come 5 days ago.
Yes,
6-3 win 5 days ago.
that is true. That is true. So we'll see. It's fun. It's an exciting race over there. I'm happy with the teams that are involved because they're like different teams than the kind of perennial teams. That has been the one thing with the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference I've been very happy with this year, is just how many teams are kind of finally taking that step forward and looking a little different. It was getting stale in the East, having just like the same like 3 or 4 juggernaut powers just constantly doing it, you know?
Yeah, no, it was. And that's one of the cool things too, is I was looking at about a week ago, looking at the playoff race and looking at the longest active playoff droughts, because congrats to the Buffalo Sabres, 14 season drought now
Mhm.
over. They have clinched a playoff spot, and they're looking good. They're going to the postseason. But I was looking at the longest active playoff droughts, and a lot of them could be ended this year. Buffalo number 1, and at the time Detroit looked a little more likely, but they're next at 9
Mhm.
seasons, and it seemed like they had a real chance. They're still technically in it. Then Anaheim, 7 seasons, that one's going to be most likely over. San Jose at that time kind of still had more of a chance at 6 seasons. Then Chicago, that's not ending. But then Columbus and Philly also with 5 seasons. And at that point, so there were 6 of the top 7 playoff droughts that very late into the season had a legit shot at ending. It seems like things are kind of going to break in a way that a lot of them won't end now. But that just was really cool that there were a lot of different teams in the mix, and teams that hadn't made it for at least half a decade.
Right. And some of those, like particularly San Jose, it'll end most likely next year. Right? Like
Yeah.
like you can tell that a lot of those teams are on the upswing. They've made it through the worst parts of their rebuilds and they're coming back. So it's an exciting time whenever the kind of power dynamics in the league start shifting and teams start going to different places. Now, we've talked about the Islanders a ton already, RJ, and we did mention the coaching change. Patrick Waugh is out. Pete DeBoer is in. I believe they made that change with 4 games left in the regular season. And you know what? I love it, RJ. I absolutely love it if you're them. I mean, obviously, you want to make a coaching change, see if you can energize the team, make a push towards the playoffs right now. But I think the more important aspect of this change is the fact that Pete DeBoer also signed for 4 years after the conclusion of this one. They had a coach out there that they liked, a coach both you and I respect immensely, and we very much believe in as being one of the top coaches in the league. And they went out and they were like, "Look, let's go out and try to grab him now instead of in the off season when potentially there's going to be other offers on the board for him, and we can just go and get our guy right now, despite the fact that we are very much in the thick of it in the middle of a playoff race and there's only 4 games left. We're going to be gutsy and we're going to go out there and be bold and make the move that we feel like is going to be the best thing for our franchise moving forward."
Yeah, the move would seem shocking and unheard of if not for a similar move by Vegas. And it's different in some key ways. We'll get to
Mhm.
that. But where you had Vegas make a coaching change very late in the season, getting rid of Cassidy, bringing in Tortorella, this one feels like it accomplishes the job that Vegas was trying to do, which is to turn things around as you're in a desperate skid at risk of making the playoffs. I think that's part of it, doing it now. But also, you, unlike the Vegas move, you are making a real upgrade at your head coach, and you are getting the guy that you want long term, and you are signing him long term. And so I'm with you, Dylan. I love this move for the Islanders. And I think it kind of, again, like I said, it accomplishes both things. And I do wonder if there's an element of like, look, it's kind of a copycat league, and that Vegas had turned things around in the short term after bringing in Tortorella, and maybe the Islanders, if you're thinking about that, like, okay, maybe we do pull the trigger on this now. But at the end of the day, even if you take away the short term, this is a big upgrade at coach and somebody that they're going to be able to build with if this team is going to be maybe contending for a playoff spot sooner rather than later. We know this is not their real contention window, but you have a franchise player in Matthew Schaefer. You have young players coming up. You're not going to want to take a huge step back next year, certainly after the goodwill that this turnaround
Mhm.
has created with everybody. This is just a slam dunk hire. And I'm excited to see what DeBoer can do with them, especially just in the last 3 games down the stretch here. If he can get them into the playoffs, that's some real valuable experience for the young guys.
Right. And if not, it's just a good head start on next year. He gets to go in there, evaluate everybody, right? Get a feel for the team, get a feel for the leadership group on the team, get a feel for Matthew Schaefer, start building a relationship with him, right? This franchise cornerstone piece. Start building that relationship now so that you can kind of hit the ground running come next training camp and next season start. I love the timing and everything. And I mean, the next thing we'll talk about is of course a front office change, but we're seeing multiple teams make front office decisions where at least they're letting people go right now just to start that hunt a little bit early. And I do think that it's a trend that we're probably going to see for the next couple years play out. Teams going ahead, not waiting until the season is completely over to make moves that they feel like they need to, just because there are so few elite tier candidates, whether you're talking about general manager or head coach. There's so few of those candidates out there that if one of them is available and you believe that it is an upgrade and an upgrade that your team is going to want to have to make in the upcoming offseason, might as well just try to get a jump start on everybody, start talking to them, and if they're interested, just go ahead and pull the trigger, because why take the chance of waiting until the offseason when everybody else is going to be going? So I think this is going to be a trend that we'll see for a little while. Will it be permanent? Probably not. All of these things tend to ebb and flow, and so my guess is it would be like a 2 to 3 year trend, and then everything will go back to being big off-season changes. But I love this move from the Islanders, and again, similar to with Torts coming in Vegas. Are they going to completely change how they're playing hockey? No. It'd be impossible for Pete DeBoer to completely change things up in 4 games, but you are building valuable experience and knowledge and relationships that are going to help this team over the 4 years that Pete DeBoer signed to coach them moving forward. And that, I think, for the Islanders in this year, that was just a hey, we got lucky, we won the draft lottery, we got this incredible kid. We just need those positive vibes and to start looking like we're legitimate again and get people on board, make ourselves look attractive to trade targets and free agents and coaching candidates, and it's done that, and that's all that matters for them. They have to focus on next year even though they're in the playoff race right now.
Yeah, and like you said, I don't think it necessarily hurts you this season. That was one thing that kind of struck me when we did the post game media availability with John Tortorella last night, where I mean, basically every question he was saying, "Look, I'm not gonna evaluate games or players or anything right now. At this point, like it's so late in the season, there's really nothing I can do. It's just we got to pick up points, and we got 1 point, which was okay. Would have liked to get two, that would have been better, but we move on to the next game, and that's really all we can focus on." And I have wondered, okay, does he mean that, and like there's a sense there's nothing he can do, and I think there is some truth to that, but it is John Tortorella, so maybe it's just a creative way of not having to actually answer any questions, so that works out well for him. But yeah, I think at this point, like as a new coach coming in, all you can do is just look and kind of mentally evaluate, but you don't make any final calls or anything. You just kind of let it play out how you do, and hopefully just turn the vibes around a little bit. I think it might be more permanent as far as just the way that this is going. We've seen it happen in college sports. It's not just an
Mhm.
NHL thing. I mean, the NHL, as usual, is kind of late to these trends, but it feels like a permanent thing we're seeing in college sports right now. I can't imagine it going away. If it does continue in the NHL, I feel like it's going to stay for at least a while longer, just because it makes so much sense with the timing of it. I think the other element of this too, where you connect it to the Vegas move, where you get rid of Cassidy and you bring in Tortorella on DeBoer's side. Because I had the question of, okay, why would DeBoer take this job? And it's a good job. Don't get me wrong. Like it's a good job to take. But I got the sense that, again, you look at the jobs that Pete DeBoer has taken in the past. They've been with teams that are ready to compete for a Stanley Cup right away.
Yep.
And I wouldn't put the Islanders in that category quite yet. So I was wondering why would he take this job, especially given that he'll have the off season and the teams will be making coaching changes and maybe he'll have more options. And you see who falters in the playoffs that maybe gets rid of their coach and wants to bring somebody in. But I think a lot of this might have been based on the fact that Bruce Cassidy's on the market now. And I don't think Pete DeBoer was going to be the top candidate this offseason anymore, because there was someone I think who actually would have been more desirable than he was.
I
Do you think
mean,
that had anything to do with it? With him like kind of wanting to jump at this chance now versus wait for the offseason?
I'm sure it had something to do with it, and I'm sure that he's been paying close attention, and he has like a group of people around him paying close attention, and has a lot more insider information on kind of how the wind is blowing within several different organizations, just to know what kind of openings were going to be out there. And I mean, I think part of it is we don't really know how many good openings there's going to be. Like looking around the league, what good opening for like a win now team do you think is really going to exist out there?
Looking at it right now, I mean, look, if they lose early, like I think they could.
Carolina.
Carolina.
Carolina's the one. And so, but like I don't think any of the other ones like
What if Edmonton loses early?
yeah, maybe. But like if you're him, I think some of this has to do with just not wanting to retread and throw himself into the meat grinder of team that is expected to win now, and you're just being thrust into that spot, and you have 2 or 3 years, and if you don't win a Stanley Cup, that's it. You're just going to be recycled for somebody else. I wonder how much of this is just him wanting to be like, look, I can be a part of building something, and then I'll be a little bit more entrenched, have maybe a little bit more security for that, have several years of it, and I'll be able to shape things and have a say in shaping things to match myself and what I value in a team a little bit more than in some other places. Because I have to assume that's part of this deal with the Islanders. Is obviously he's not going to be the general manager or anything, but I'm sure that they had many discussions before they hired him about, him being able to have some input into the types of players that they're going to go and get as they build this team up around their young pieces, where you're not going to have that in Carolina, you're not going to have that in Edmonton, and he hasn't had that when he was in, say, Vegas. He didn't have that in Dallas. And so I do wonder if some of this is just him being like, look, maybe I can get over that hump and finally win a Stanley Cup if I can kind of help build a roster specifically to my needs.
Yeah, and I could see that. And the other team I think where he might have had a similar opportunity with that, and the one I would really wonder about if DeBoer hadn't taken this job and was still on the market, is Utah.
Yeah,
because I think
Utah is
they're
an
in a
interesting one.
similar situation. And I think also David Pagnotta reported that like before they went on a run earlier, that there was some chatter over them potentially looking at DeBoer to take over. So maybe there would have been some interest there. But that's, I guess, the only other job then that would be in that category of younger team that's looking to kind of take the next step. But if you're DeBoer, do you want to really wait for the offseason and see if Utah falters in such a way that they would make there's a lot more uncertainty there
Yeah.
versus this job's being offered to you right now. And oh yeah, by the way, you could be coaching in the Stanley Cup playoffs in a couple weeks.
Right. And with Utah, the thing that would scare me as a head coaching candidate is if they falter, it's because these players have like significant gaps in their game. And I don't know that you can just like easily fix that as a coach. Right? Like it's one of those things that I think we put on coaches, or certainly the media puts on coaches. Like you'd look at this Utah group and you'd be like, okay, they need somebody who's going to be a disciplinarian who's going to get them to shore up systems wise. These players aren't capable of it. Like
They are.
I genuinely don't think that they have enough of these forwards that are going to be capable of being like two-way guys and doing all of that stuff. So I think you need to like rebuild the blue line to be able to shore that up and significantly tweak how you play them and risk, you know, handcuffing them a little bit offensively in order to get them to kind of play that way. So like I don't know how easy of a fix that is.
I mean, I would push back on that. We won't get into all the details of Utah and everything, but I think they've got the horses at forward to at least, play well enough defensively, but also if you change the way the D plays and have them being a little more conservative, you got the guys who can make up for it scoring wise if you take away some of what the D is able to do generating offense. Like I'm a big believer in the talent they have there. Yeah, you got to make some tweaks a little bit to the roster, I think, to play a DeBoer
Right.
style game, but they've got all the flexibility in the world to do that. They've
Yeah,
got
they
all the
do.
assets to do that. Like I'm a big believer in the foundation that Utah has. I think at a certain point they're going to have to figure out, okay, we need to play some playoff style hockey. Right now, let everyone have their fun, but they've clinched a playoff spot. They're going to the playoffs this year. That's when expectations start. And I think at a certain point this year, they're going to get exposed because you just can't play this way and win a Stanley Cup. And then at that point, they're going to look to make some changes in the way that they play, but they've got all the potential, all the ability to do that.
I again, I love that forward group. I just like I said, you'd have to remake the blue line.
I don't know that you'd have to entirely remake it.
I well, yeah, okay, you're gonna keep Sergachev and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's you need at least
I think you
three
could even
guys
keep Uyghur
changed.
and Dersey.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I forgot
And
Uyghur
then,
is
and
there
also, I
now.
mean, like Simashev coming up. I know he just, is coming up this season,
Hmm.
but like he totally
Yeah,
fits into that.
he's more of what you need. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
Utah's in a good spot.
They are. I don't know about like Logan Cooley becoming a two-way center for playoff hockey, right? Like there's
I don't think
enough
you need to
there.
change the forwards up as much as you think.
Yeah, there's enough there, where I think it'll be tough for them to be like conference final and better team, right? Like I think consistent. I could see them ending up Carolina of the West very easily, where first couple rounds is very easy for them to just outclass people, and then when it's like like button down, buckle up time, it gets tough for them, and they kind of struggle to figure out their way to get past that.
Well,
Like
I
for
could,
different reasons than Carolina, but that same
yeah.
kind of vibe.
Okay, well, I could see that again if they continue to play in a similar way to how they do now. But if they switch that up, then I think their issue is another issue that Carolina has, which is the lack of that like elite talent kind of
Right.
guy. And it's something that Carolina's been searching for forever. They're
Right.
trying to make
Yes.
those moves.
Yeah.
I get that. And Utah's in the same spot. The thing is, I think Utah has every bit as much, probably more ammunition to make those moves than Carolina does at this point.
Right.
And for whatever reason, players just don't want to stay in Carolina. I don't get it, but elite like
Yeah.
players don't want to stay in Carolina. I wonder if that's different in
In
Utah.
Utah. Yeah. I don't
Maybe
know.
they won't have that problem. I don't know, but they're going to be in the same spot where they need to go then bring
That's
in the elite guy.
yeah.
But they've got all the ability in the world to
No,
do it.
they do. It's just like until they do it, certainly if you're a coaching candidate, you look at them versus say the Islanders, and this was going to be my next point. Actually, I was literally going to bring that up with Utah. You look at them versus this Islanders job. If you're Pete DeBoer, you have Matthew Schaefer. right? And not only do you have Matthew Schaefer, you get to completely mold Matthew Schaefer because he is only going to be 19 next year, right? Like you can turn him into exactly what you want him to be as the driving force of an NHL team at a star caliber level. And that's something that Pete DeBoer has not had the opportunity. He's coached plenty of stars, but he has not had the opportunity, I would argue, to have one on the blue line like this and the ability to mold them exactly to what he wants them to be.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think that I just wonder that look, Matthew Schaefer's a superstar, no question about that. He's going to be winning Norris trophies at some point. How much does that move the needle for a team just because he's a defenseman? I really wonder how much the best defenseman in the NHL, just for say, for example, can do if you're
Mhm.
trying to build a cup winner versus having a forward that's of that elite quality. I don't know. And so that's where I'm like, Utah's forward group, plus all the assets they have, plus versus Schaefer as a defenseman. That's where I still wonder about it, just positional value wise. But I mean, it is a heck of a piece that that you have. Like I again, it's an attractive job.
It
The
is,
Isles
yeah.
job is not bad. I'm not trying to say it's bad. Personally, I would lean Utah, but you can make a good case for both.
Yeah. Well, and again, you potentially have to wait and you'd have to have waited another year for Utah and everything. So,
Yeah, no,
uh,
with the uncertainty or
yeah.
whatever. I get
Yeah.
why, and that's what I'm saying. I think especially knowing you are not necessarily the top coaching option on the market anymore, it's a little extra incentive to jump at this right now.
Yeah, the interesting thing with both Pete DeBoer and Bruce Cassidy potentially being on the market at the same time is that um, of teams that would be looking for that win now coach, having to try to match them up with spots that they haven't been before. Cause like that's like the first thing with like Vegas, right? Vegas needs to go out and find an elite tier coach to replace Bruce Cassidy because Tortorella is only coaching through the rest of this year. Well, who was the elite tier coach available? Well, it was Pete DeBoer, but they fired him, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Like it wasn't gonna be Pete DeBoer. And so, like, at some point, when you are talking about the elite tier coaches and particularly like a Bruce Cassidy type where he wears out his welcome so quickly with teams that then they have to move on and he goes on to the next spot. I do wonder if there really was going to be a ton of competition between the two just because like there's some overlap there and everything.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I mean, there's a reason I didn't mention Vegas as
Yes. No,
as
no,
one of
I
these
know.
spots,
Yeah,
obviously.
obviously. I'm just saying like that becomes like this weird dance that I could easily see being a problem around Bruce Cassidy like in 2 to 3 more years when he's like go from wherever he goes this off season where it's just like you're going to have a lot of the same teams still within those windows and it's just like you can't retread with the same guy.
No, you can't. Although as I was looking at just NHL team coaching histories the other day, because I was thinking, well, how unprecedented would it be if the Kraken like totally cleaned house and Lambert was part of that and had to go and everything? There were a lot of instances, especially through the early 2000s, 2010s, where teams went back to someone that they
Mhm.
had in the past. I mean, Buffalo's in the middle of one of those right now
Yep.
with Lindy Ruff. So it does happen, but I feel like certainly in like those Vegas situations and all that, like those bridges are burned. It's not
Yeah.
happening.
I feel like that was a different era of the NHL where they were going back to guys that they had had for many years previously. Like there was like this rock solid relationship between those organizations, those ownership groups, those front offices, those coaching staffs, the fans and those coaches, right? That just doesn't really exist in the modern NHL anymore because coaches are so replaceable and they are replaced so frequently.
That's a good point. Cause yeah, it's a different thing where,
Like
coaches
Lindy
are,
Ruff had been in Buffalo for like a million years, roughly, give or
oh yeah,
take a
yes,
few.
yes. No, absolutely.
Like,
And so that's different. I'm trying to think of another example. I guess the other one you could see in the NHL is Glenn Gulletson,
yeah.
because he was the Stars head coach for a couple years. But the thing is, he was their AHL head coach for a couple years prior to that. The organization had more experience with him. But I guess that's the closest thing I can think to it.
Well, and that is the other thing is like if they were, your AHL coach, that was the way that a lot of these guys ended up in those spots, and then they go back. But yeah, I mean, Lindy Ruff had coached Buffalo from the time he was 37 to 52. That first stretch, like he was there forever. So yeah, and I in a way, like I just don't think that that kind of thing exists anymore with guys like Bruce Cassidy and Pete DeBoer, right? Like you would have to have like the longevity of like John Cooper in Tampa, where like Cooper decides to retire or go somewhere else, and then a couple of years later, Tampa's like, oh, we need to make a change, and John Cooper comes back for a little while, right? Like those would be the kind of modern day example that I could think of.
Yeah. No, and then one one thing I was also looking at when I was going over the coaches and everything, because I was just skimming real fast just to see, like, not even looking at names, but just like, was it the same name, for
Hmm.
the season one to the next or whatever, just to see where there were breaks and things. And I was looking at, I didn't even like know what team I was looking at, but it turned out to be Detroit, and I was just like, who the heck is this guy? Coached the team for like 20 years, won 3 cups. Like, what is this? And I say, oh, yeah, that's Jack Adams, the guy they named the best coach award after. That makes sense.
Yeah. Things were different back then, that's for
So
sure.
yeah, I had to stop my skimming there and see, oh, yeah, who coached from 1927 to 1947? The Red Wings. Yeah, that'd be the guy.
It's a good stretch. Good stretch. Are you sure it's not Lindy Ruff with the Sabres?
I know. Well, that I wasn't even like focused. I was trying to speed run this thing. I wasn't even
Mhm.
focused on what team it was. So I was just like, who the heck is this guy? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, all right. Anything else on like coaches in general that you want to get out before we move on to all the front office changes from this past week?
No, I mean, I think we'll just revisit it, once the playoffs happen and we see the inevitable disappointment somewhere, and where the coaching market stands. But I think just it's a new trend now. Everyone should kind of pay attention to this. I Maybe I'll jinx it. I don't think we're going to see any more in-season coaching changes.
I don't think so either.
3 games to go.
And I will say I think the thing that is going to be the trend that will be a trend rather than just the new norm is specifically with coaches. I think that's going to be like a trend, and like teams will see if this works or not. I think for the most part, I think the front office thing is legit because I think with the front office, particularly after the trade deadline, you don't need to have a GM really to handle all those day-to-day things. And it's one of those things where you can start talking to candidates, have a little bit more runway, and bring them in sooner before, say, a week before the draft, which has kind of been like the way it's been handled, where it's like you come in and it's like, congrats, you have a month. You may have to put together a scouting staff if the previous guy took his with him, right? And you're like trying to piece everything together right before you have the draft and free agency to bring guys in, or at least start that interview process earlier so that everybody kind of has their stuff together. It just makes sense. Like if you're going to make a front office change these days, I think you could wait for the trade deadline and see how that goes, and if you're not happy with how it went, just make the change the next day, and then potentially hire somebody, let them come in, review operations and everything, and then let them tackle like have a complete off season in which to tackle things rather than waiting until the off season. On the coaching side of things, I think there was some specific examples this year that I don't think we're going to see repeated that often.
Yeah, I could still see it being a thing with the coaches, but for the front office, like, that absolutely makes
Yeah.
sense. I
It,
don't know. I hadn't thought as extreme as just the day after the trade
why
deadline,
not?
let the guy go. But
Because
yeah, why not? They
you
have
could give
nothing left
yourself
they really need to do.
right, you could give yourself a whole month at that point to interview people and bring somebody in after a month, and they would still have time in the regular season to review operations and get to know everybody in the organization and start deciding who they want to keep and who they want to move on from. Like
Yeah,
it just makes sense to me. And on the coaching front, I think yes, there will be what this season establishes is you won't be afraid to do it if the situation makes sense. I just don't know how often those situations will pop up I don't think it'll be as consistent as with front office people. And speaking of which, one of those front office people let go this past week was Tom Fitzgerald, general manager of the New Jersey Devils. Devils going to be on the hunt for new front office, throwing their hat in the ring, RJ, alongside Toronto and Nashville. What do you think New Jersey's, how would you rate those three jobs? Because I
Oh, that's a
imagine
good
there's going to be
question.
some significant overlap in the candidates that these three organizations are talking to and have been talking to in the case of Toronto and Nashville. If you're New Jersey, like where would you put these three? Because like Nashville's situation is probably the worst. It's probably the most attractive if you're a builder and you want to start somewhere from scratch. Because Nashville over the next couple of years is going to be tearing things down most likely. And if you're in and they like you, they will keep you forever because that's what they did with the previous GM prior to Trotz. New Jersey and Toronto are interesting because you have very legitimate pieces on these teams, very attractive, good star caliber players, but a lot of problems.
Yeah, and so I would rank the GM jobs from most to least desirable. I would go New Jersey, then Nashville, then Toronto. And I think there's a sizable gap from Nashville down to Toronto just because Toronto has unique issues, we'll say, with that market. And I know you have your foundational pieces there, but I think given that you lost Mitch Marner, I don't know that you have enough and crucially enough runway to build around those guys if you're a GM. And given that market, the pressure, you're not going to have any more runway than you could possibly have, right? If things start to go poorly, it's going to turn on you. So I'd say that's the worst job of the three, even though the roster isn't set up the worst. I think it's the situation around everything in that market. And also, if you're the guy, if you don't turn around, you're the guy that then lost Austin Matthews and
Mhm.
William Nylander, and you're certainly not going to be the guy to oversee that rebuild. So that's the job I would probably least want of the three. Um, at least Nashville and New Jersey, there's a little less pressure on you in the market. I think New Jersey's situation, as far as the roster and everything they have, is much better.
Mhm.
And so that's why I would put it at number one, because you do have a lot of really skilled players you can work around. There should be enough talent on that team to be a playoff team. Fix the goaltending. Easier. I was going to say easier said than done, but no, it's just down to luck. You just bring in some new
Yes.
goalies and kind of see if they work. That's all you can really do to fix goaltending. But I think the fix there is much easier than say in Nashville, where you've got a lot of aging players. You kind of have a ceiling there. The issue with New Jersey, though, is you do have this ticking time bomb with that team and it's the Hughes situation. And this is
Yes.
what I think largely got the last GM fired,
Yep.
is that he let Quinn Hughes go to Minnesota and not go to New Jersey. Now, he hasn't extended in Minnesota, and we'll see if he even has any interest in doing so. But if he does, you are all of a sudden in a really awkward position where you might have to be wrestling to keep the Hugheses that you have. And that could be the undoing of the entire team. Like, so much of your job just rests on finding a way to get Quinn Hughes to New Jersey. And so, like, that's basically the whole
Yeah,
job.
that is the job. Like I have to imagine that's what the interview process will be is come in and tell us your roadmap to get Quinn Hughes.
Right. And so part of that is, okay, just making the team competitive again. You want to make make it a playoff team. You want to make it a place that is desirable for him to come play, of course. But there's also some non-hockey factors there where, like, I don't know. I'm not involved enough in this world to know exactly what Quinn Hughes is looking for in a GM for a team that he's not even on. I don't know. So there's that element to the job, but I still think there's more to work with there than in Nashville. As far as just the overall, like, the situation, if you threw out all three rosters, I would say Nashville is best, but New Jersey gets the edge.
Yeah, I'm with you. New Jersey gets the edge for me because they have Jack Hughes, and that's just a level of player that the other, Nashville doesn't have. I'm with you on Toronto. Toronto is interesting in the sense that it is by far and away the biggest risk reward ratio because yes, the risk is that you lose Austin Matthews, things fall apart. Everyone in Toronto hates you, but you just kind of join a long line in that regard. So like, I don't
Yeah.
think it's like that big a deal. Um, but you're going to have the shortest leash there, I would imagine, over the other two spots. And so that's the risk that you have to weigh, is that you're going to have potentially a difficult ownership group to deal with just because of the situation there. You have the most difficult fan base to deal with between these three by far. But the reward is, if you're the guy who could figure it out, you've set yourself
Legend
up
forever.
forever. So there
Yeah.
is that component to it. And I think that that is attractive to people in this spot. I don't discount that. It's attractive to me. Like, there is that part of you that's just always like, well, I could maybe, if I did, like, just do this, get lucky in a round here. There you go. Um, the New Jersey situation, though, I think it has its pitfalls beyond just the Quinn Hughes thing. Because, like, if Quinn Hughes comes there, great. You are pretty set up at that point. You're going to be a massive presence, particularly in the Metropolitan Division, where other teams have to start beginning rebuilds. You should be easily one of those top three teams in that division for a long time if you have all three Hughes brothers. The issue is, I hate this forward group beyond like three guys. Like, it's a brutal forward group, and like defensively there's some good depth there, and I believe in some of the depth there. But this forward group outside of Jack Hughes, Nico Heischer, and Jesper Bratt is bad. It's really bad. Now the good news is almost everybody's on deals that expire either this year or next year. So if you are coming in as a GM, you can completely reshape this forward group. But I've always been confused, RJ, looking at this forward group, what exactly Tom Fitzgerald was going for. Because it's not like it's not a I just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing though. Replacing, overhauling a depth forward group, like overhauling a
Yeah,
bottom
that's
six
totally
or middle
doable.
six, that's the easiest
It
job
is.
you can have as a GM. That's easier than rebuilding a blue line.
Yeah.
That's easier than finding star talent at the top of the forward group. Like you have the easiest job as a GM, and like that's, I think, the most, probably should be the most fun part of it, is you can kind of
Yeah.
mold a bottom six, middle six to be however you want it, and like those guys can be had. You can take your pick. So like that's a fun job to
Yeah,
me.
no, I'm just saying what
Um,
I think the day one priority really has to be is that, you
yeah.
know,
For
because
sure, but
it's
I
not
think it's
good
super
now.
doable, and also like I don't hate you. Look, you definitely need more out of Timo Meyer. Like he has not been good
He's
since
been
getting New Jersey.
he's been steadily declining year to year since he's been there.
Yeah, but again, that's one of those where the contract, it's not good, but it's going to look better as the cap goes up, and if you do need to kind of transition him into like a top nine guy who takes advantage of plus matchups, like you can do that. I don't hate it, in that sense. But yeah, you basically just like redo your bottom six, and you should be set, and those guys can be had, and you know what, you got a bunch of cap space to work with as the cap goes up.
Well,
So
I think it's a little more than the bottom six. Like, the thing that concerns me is, what is your second line around Nico Heischer? And for then the times when Jack Hughes is going to miss, say, 30 games a year, because he just kind of always does, 20 to 30 games. What is your situation on that second line when Nico Heischer has to be your 1C? Like, because
right, and
that's what's been crushing this Devils team these last couple of years, has been that exact scenario.
right, and so I mean, you do have to prepare for that, and that's, I think, important part of like you need to bring in another center who can step up in those times. But I mean, those guys, I'm trying to think of like creative options for them, but especially like you could go after certain players who,
Oh
like,
yeah,
when
they
the cap,
definitely exist.
yeah, they definitely exist. You can go get those centers. I would be trying to figure out a way that like Chandler Stevenson could make any sense there. But like contract aside, he kind of
He
fits
does.
what
Yes,
you might be
that
looking
is the
for there.
player that you're kind of looking for. Yes, for sure. No, again,
And someone like that could be had.
yeah, again, I think it's a very fixable problem. I think that the center depth is almost easier than, like, who's scoring on your second line. And like, on, or who's playing on the wing, like who's really pairing up with Heischer in a significant way, cuz I just don't think Timo Meyer is it. Um it's more so like, yeah, just trying to bring in another scorer of significant quality, which, lots of teams have a problem with. And so you're just kind of throwing your hat into that same ring that everybody is.
Right, and you might have to, overpay for those guys, but I think that's less and less of an issue with the new cap environment. But again, I think that's such a
Yeah, no,
solvable problem.
availability is the problem more so than anything. Because like even the cap situation with this team is not a problem. Like you've got tons of flexibility there if you're coming in as a GM. Like there is so much that is fine about this team. It's just strictly like you have the same problem as like 27 other organizations, and you just have to compete with them. And I don't know that you're always going to be the most attractive option for people when you are competing with them
Yeah, possibly not, but
because
that's
of how they've
where maybe
underperformed so many times now.
right. But that's where, either you spend a little money for on a newer contract, or again, you bring in somebody like again, I hate that like Chandler Stevenson is the guy who's coming to mind, because that's gonna for our Kraken fan listeners, that's gonna like you raise a whole bunch of stuff. But somebody like that who's on a contract that's maybe worth more, has more term than the guy is worth, but you take that trade off, or you get some money retained, and then you have your guy. Like, I think there's going to be plenty of those types of players, not necessarily just him, but plenty of those types of players that you should be able to bring in.
Yeah,
So
like I said, it's
the devil's job, that's the one.
the bottom six isn't a concern for me. Like that is so fixable. And again, I've been agreeing with you this whole time that it is by far
Yeah,
the
fair.
most
So why, yeah,
attractive of
we're
the
going
three
around in
jobs.
circles here.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, for whoever does take this New Jersey job, because like we have to talk about that. Like, what would you do? I think the biggest thing that I would focus on, because like, yes, you need to have a roadmap for Quinn Hughes. It might just be the free agency route at this point, so you just have to make sure that there's money available for if when that happens. I think the biggest thing is trying to figure out, and it's not going to exist on the free agency market this summer, bringing in somebody else that has 25 to 30 goal upside that can play on your second line wing.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I think with this conversation, I think, either just assumed he's gone or glossed over, but there's also the matter of the coach.
Well, I'm assuming yes, because I had that earlier and I forgot it. The other thing is, I'm assuming whoever comes in and takes over the GM spot is probably going to want to bring in their own coach, because I think at this point we can safely say, as I said earlier, this team has massively underperformed the last couple years. I think it's safe to say that Sheldon Keefe isn't the answer here in New Jersey.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say. I know you've never really been a fan of his as
Yeah.
a coach. I know you were saying the Leafs should have gotten rid of him much, much sooner than they did. You didn't like the hire for New Jersey. Hasn't gone very well. I think they'd need to move on and find a different coach. So that's an important job. And also, I mean, okay, is it too early? This is crazy. You know the mistake the Canucks made. Is it
Yes.
too early to handpick your coach just for Quinn Hughes?
No, again, if it ever comes down to Quinn Hughes being a free agent or whatever, you have the thing that he wants already, and that is his brothers. So like, I don't think you have to be doing anything to win over Quinn Hughes beyond saying we've got the best coach that we think we could find, period. Right? Just being the best and building the best team possible to try to win as much as possible, because it's like that. I think it has to be the thing. You already
Well,
have the other stuff.
yes, but I think there might be a trade-off there, as I think about the top coach on the market this year, and
Well,
Bruce
yes, it's not
Cassidy
Bruce Cassidy. I
reportedly
wouldn't be
wears
going
on his
after him.
players.
Yes,
Like,
I
is that
wouldn't be.
worth it?
I wouldn't go with Bruce Cassidy. I would be going with a different best coach available. I'm
Okay.
also like, because I was gonna say, assuming Sheldon Keefe ends up on the market, which I think is a safe, it's certainly a safer
Yeah,
assumption
yeah.
at this point because of the front office change, and trying to think about other coaches that might be on the market this year. I don't think there'll be a ton because so many teams made a move last year. I mean, we could talk about this because Bruce Cassidy's out there. We could wait for him to be hired by someone. I just genuinely, I'm not sure that Bruce Cassidy is that good a coach. Like, I would
You
not
don't think
have
so?
him over Pete DeBoer. No, I just don't. I think he's a very good coach. Like, I think there are guys like Sheldon Keefe that are capable of getting exactly what you're supposed to out of the roster that they're given, which is, you know what I mean? Like these Devils teams, right? Like the Devils team this year, it's not a playoff roster. Certainly not with how much time Jack Hughes missed, right? Like, it's just not. And Sheldon Keefe didn't,
Not in this
and
conference and
with the
this year with the
yeah,
bar high. They're a
yeah.
playoff team in the West, but yeah, it's
Yes,
different.
yes. But like their record of 40, 36, and 3 is kind of exactly what you would think this roster would have, particularly with the way the goaltending has
I
performed,
was gonna
right?
say if they get bad goaltending,
There's
yeah.
tons of coaches like that are not bad. They're not going to actively harm you, but they're certainly not going to elevate your roster and add an additional 10 point standings points to your team. And I do think that Bruce Cassidy is one of those guys that can add 10 standings points to your team. But I don't think that he's like a fix or anything either, in the sense that like he can take a playoff bubble team and turn them into a Stanley Cup contender. Like I don't think he's that level good.
I get well, okay. How many coaches would you say are that level good?
Like two.
Okay, well then if I say he's a top 5 coach,
Yeah, I
I think
know.
that's pretty good,
I
and then
think
there you go.
well, but I also think that the other thing is the fact that he does definitively make his teams hate him. Right? It's the Jim Montgomery thing, where like these guys find a way to make really, really good players despise them in a matter of years. Like
Well,
two
okay,
to
Dylan,
three years.
how many top 5 coaches don't do that?
Uh well, certainly the two that I was thinking of in Paul Maurice and John Cooper don't seem to.
I know, but I think that's it. I think that's end of list. Could DeBoer kind of does.
Yeah, not in the same way.
Not in the same way,
Like
but I
I
mean
think Pete
the end
DeBoer
effect,
can
like in
last another
Dallas, he
year
like
or
needed
two.
to leave.
Yeah,
He threw Ottinger under the bus.
yeah. I mean, see about
I think part of it comes with the territory.
maybe. I mean,
When you're coaching at that level of pressure at that high, like it's the kind of thing that just wears on everybody. And if you have to like maintain that level, it just kind of kills things after a while.
maybe I'm thinking about the old guard too much, but like, Mike Sullivan's not really part of the old guard, but I think back to like Quinville. I didn't,
Mhm.
always get that vibe there. Barry Trotz, like, didn't always get
Yeah, no,
that
I'll give you
vibe
Barry
there.
Trotz, but he's
Like,
not coaching anymore.
right. No, I know. I'm just saying, like, these
Yeah.
coaches can exist, and those I think are the ones that you try to lock down forever. I don't think that it's sustainable to have these coaches that wear out their welcome and you have to replace them every 2 to 3 years and all of that. Like I just don't think it's a sustainable model. I know it's what everybody's going with, but I don't know that it's really worked that well.
I think it is. I think it can work. And look, if you look at a teams, for most teams, they're like a real win now competitive, cup competitive type window. What is it? 10 years max, absolute max.
How many of these real hardo coaches though that are just brought in for a competitive roster have actually won? Is Bruce Cassidy with Vegas the only one? And it was just
I mean,
once.
DeBoer's gotten close a whole
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. But it was just once.
Well,
And
you
it was
have a
just
lot of the
Bruce
recent
Cassidy.
Stanley
Like,
Cup winners that have come from the two guys that are like not
yes,
this
I know.
way.
I understand that.
And also from rosters. I mean, look,
I
the
mean,
number
Sutter
one thing you
was
can do is
before
build a
that.
roster that is just so much better than anybody else. Like kind of like, Florida had that, but with the coaching, Tampa had that, a roster that was just so much better. Colorado, that their cup win was certainly
Right.
that. But you look at, I mean, I think you look at the last cup winners that were not them, and you have Cassidy, who's certainly one of those guys in Vegas. You've got Berube, who I think is kind of one of those guys in St. Louis. And I know that was like the outlier of all outliers.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost don't even think that
Yeah, it
count
shouldn't
that.
even count.
Um,
But then
but
you get
yeah,
into the
then it
old
goes,
guard where
yeah, then
it's
it is
Trotz,
Sutter.
Sullivan, Quenneville, Sutter, Quenneville, Sutter.
Right. But as far as being
And
the
those
like,
rosters were like special.
yeah,
Those were like all dynasty teams.
yeah. I don't know.
So
I
yeah.
just think like Bruce Cassidy's like transition style game. I don't know that it's like still the relevant thing that it was when he was like hired in Vegas.
I think the way that his teams can just lock things down in the D zone and just ruthlessly defend and put that pressure on and defend the way that they are, I think that's timeless. In the playoffs, that's timeless.
That why he's got one series win over the last two playoffs.
I think there's some issues with that. Again, you need the good goaltending, and the one season you got the great goaltending, you got it.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like it's just one of those things. Like I don't know that he's got that to him anymore. I think the game is shifting, and I don't know that he's as relevant as before.
Interesting. I mean,
In a
look,
weird
if
way,
some of
I
the
think
if
it's
some of
shifting
the
in favor of Pete
stuff that's
DeBoer.
coming out of Vegas about
Yeah,
players potentially really not liking him is true,
yeah,
then maybe that's because I think that generally is shifting among coaches where
yes, that
you
is.
can't
Yeah,
have you need to have a lighter touch, and even guys like Tortorella like get this.
yes,
They've mellowed because they know they have to change with
yeah,
the times. It's just not going to resonate with the new players. That I get,
yeah.
but I think as far as the style of hockey and all that sort of thing, the defense or like that works.
I we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see his next stint, like where he chooses to go, because he's clearly
Yeah.
the top coach on the market. I think you wouldn't like. I don't think
Yeah,
you could
I
pick
don't
a
think
name
there's
that
anybody better. No, not
he'll be
now
thought
that
of
Pete
as the
DeBoer
top
is
coach on
gone.
the
Yeah,
market. So we'll see where he decides to go.
yeah. No, I just think that the game is shifting more towards like the Rick Tocchet style of systems and things rather than the Bruce Cassidy and even like Mike Sullivan. Like I do think Mike Sullivan's systems and stuff are just too dated now. Like obviously there's bigger problems with both Pittsburgh and how he finished up there and with the Rangers now. But like that's a coach that I really respect and I do think is a genuinely top 5 coach. I think his systems are getting too outdated for the way the league is played now. And the way defensemen move and stuff, like it's just not doesn't work.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
mean,
that's
I'd
my
still
thing
like to
with
see
Bruce
him coach a
Cassidy
team with a
too.
roster that's good enough. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So
Sullivan,
we'll
just because
see.
it's been so long. Since
Yeah, it has been a minute for sure. And again, give any of these guys the roster that like Paul Maurice has had in Florida, they're winning. Like they are.
Yeah.
Like those teams are that good. So but yeah. But I think they don't last as long as Paul Maurice and you maybe don't have 3 straight finals appearances in the same way like because
No,
they
I think
don't
he's a cut above
balance
for
out
sure.
the vibe and everything with the structure. So we'll see. Anything else before we sign off today here?
No, I think that's about. I mean, what is next Friday? Like, we'll see. Yeah, that'll be
The
right
season
after
will
the
be
season's
over.
over.
Yeah, it ends next
Okay,
Thursday.
cool.
So
So we'll be able to give our
yes.
playoff picks and
Yep.
everything. I'm excited for that.
Timing works out great. So yeah, I'm looking
I got to get our
forward to
bracket
it.
challenge started. I'll let everybody know. I think I'll probably try and set that up today for do the ECH bracket challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm excited to have all this come back around and see how this last week plays out because it is I mean, outside of the playoffs, it's as exciting as hockey can get in the NHL is this last week here as we standings watch in both directions. Fun
Yeah.
races in both on both sides of things. So can't
It's
wait
as
to
close
see.
as it's been in a long time. So just take it in, watch every game, every night, except tonight because there's no games.
Yes. God, don't even get me started. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll see you all next time.